First up, we're looking for approval of the agenda.
Support.
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Public comments. You have 5 minutes. Just give us your name. Hello, public. Looks to me like all staff. No public comments. Committee items, minutes from the August 10th meeting. Looking for approval.
Move to accept.
Motion and support. Any corrections or additions or deletions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Appointments. We have one appointment, I believe, to, I apologize for not having it pulled up, I believe the Community Action Agency. Julie was the appointee and Sarah is the applicant. We'd be looking for a motion. Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Sarah's name will be forwarded to the full board. Conservation District Biannual Report. Do we have anyone here from the Conservation District? I see none. Lengthy report, 3-page, I think. Any questions on it, commissioners, or we can forward them to staff, or maybe Mike is fully up to speed on it and can give us.
Had a nice meeting with me the other day.
Okay, nothing new to report from you then. Okay. Kent Mauer, it says here, Airport MDOT sponsor contract runway 725, phase 1 construction.
Good morning.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm asking for approval of the resolution that would authorize the chairman to sign the MDOT sponsor contract to construct runway 725 phase 1. Next Wednesday, the Michigan Aeronautics Commission will likely approve this grant, and this approval, if it happened, would come the day before, so it's actually a pre-approval. By doing that, we would save at least 30-day start on construction. The Aeronautics Commission has already transferred the bulk of this. This was the additional funding that we had hoped for from the FAA. So the funding would be a little over $13 million federal, $342,500 local, that would be us, and then $342,500 from the state. And again, this was a 2.5% grandfathering. Otherwise, that bill would be just short of $700,000 local and state. So this allows us to do the full project, which is $12.5 million, and it will now include the paving and then the other costs are consultant costs and a small contingency.
Okay, commissioners, any questions of Kent? If not, we'd be looking for a motion to forward this on. Motion and support. Questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Fair biannual report. Denise.
Stay out of your way, so I don't stir it back. Oh, yeah. Give me what I have to get to make it go. Okay, so. There'll be a folder that'll pop up here in a second. Use. Open folder. There you go. Oh. And you know how to put it in play mode.
Where?
Or actually, you can do it here.
Slideshow? Yep. It'll go at my speed, right?
And then from the beginning.
Good morning. Sorry, I know every time I do this, I'm technically challenged. That's why I rely on our IT department for these kind of things that I do, and so since Adam is here today. Well, we had a great year. I feel really good coming off. You know, this was a banner year for us in regards to making some changes on the fairgrounds that I think really ended up playing well for us. I'm sure that everyone here was well aware that we had wonderful weather. We had clear days except for one night, which was the night of the monster trucks, and that was the night that the fair raincoats came out, just because we had a deluge. But the show got in, and everybody was happy, and we had nobody towed out of the infield. So that's always a very positive thing when we get rain on the fairgrounds. Our birthing barn was back up to speed, except for our poultry, but we had baby pigs back, and that is a huge thing. So when baby pigs are able to be born during Fair Week, that just makes everybody's week. We had a couple of baby calves born. Dr. Trupiano does such a great job in working with our local farmers and getting those species to have babies during that time, because most of them, it's not normal season for them to be producing. So we're always just really, really proud of what he does for us. Our attendance was up again this year. Our percentage wasn't quite as high as the year before, but overall the entire week, Sunday coming out of the gates, ginormous and huge, really put us over the top. We had an increase again in our exhibitors, which I'm very proud to say. And of course, when I talked to Jim at Finance in regards to covering our premium monies, he always looks at me, but I'm really happy to report that we have to pay out just a little bit more this year because of the amount of exhibitors that we have. Then, again, AT&T, which is one of our biggest sponsors and supporters of the fair, came out again a couple of weeks before the fair and agreed to again sponsor Veterans Day, on top of the sponsorship that I received, which is the $30,000 that Jackson Community Foundation was able to help us out getting the funds from point A to point B. But they've made a 3-year commitment with that $30,000, so it's $10,000 a year. So very, very happy and pleased that they are, again, they know the importance of their presence in Jackson, but with the veterans things too. And actually, President Jim Murray came to me and would like us to sit down and have some conversations about what we might do different and bigger for next year for veterans. So I'm excited about that conversation to see how that all works out. Of course, our grandstand shows. You know, this was the whole reason, and it warms my heart. I actually added a new picture that maybe no one has seen, because what taking the stage down and revamping the venue there, the grandstand venue, it paid off big, and it warmed my heart. This next picture, actually, when we're done through these shows, will show you why. But by removing the stage and being able to bring in a portable stage and the screens, which, bar none, were the highlight of that stage. For those of you that saw the shows, I hope you feel the same way too, because many, many folks that came to the show, that's what they said. Oh my gosh, you know, they could not believe what the transformation from last year to this year. They just so enjoyed having the screens along with this beautiful stage. But we moved the fencing back and, you know, created a whole new venue. And the expense that it cost us this year, of course, was a one-time expense, because next year we're all good with our tarps and everything else. But what it did for the shows was phenomenal. And Sunday night was Shinedown and Pop Evil. We had very close to 7,000 people in that grandstand. Haven't had numbers like that since the Reba days. And so this is, I mean, it gave me chills when I walked up into the grandstand to see, you know, what the amount of people. We had about 3,500 down on the track. That's a lot of people. So of course, we, you know, a little bit of just concern that, you know, everybody was safe. We had a great security company that we hired through our promoter, but with our county sheriffs and everything, it was a show that we had no issues. We had 2 tiny little incidences down in the track that just were Mr. and Mrs. having a difference of opinion on how close they could get to the stage, but that was taken care of without any kind of, nobody was removed from the venue, so I think that says a lot. The Beach Boys, we did really well, very much enjoyed that show. Would have liked to seen a few more people in the venue. However, I think the weather that threatened that morning did drop our numbers a little bit. And being senior day, it also dropped our gate numbers just a little bit. But not enough to say that the show was not a success, because it was. And then Gabriel, and I know a number of you that were there at that show, I have to say, I was driving through the parking lot several times during the show, and the laughter that was coming from the grandstands was as loud as the music on any of the other 2 nights. I have to say, I wish I could have recorded it. It was just, I actually had to stop my golf cart and listen to it, because it was just unbelievable, and it was the entire show. So that being said, I I think when the Fair Board sat down and we looked at looking in a different direction and seeing what new stuff we could bring, that our comedy show definitely was a big hit. And with the fact that we weren't able to have country this year, we thought we would stretch out and do something a little new, and I think that we have the right recipe. Not to say that we won't be looking at country again. We always are looking for the best show, but we've got to have something that really, really works. And with a little bit of competition in July with Faster Horses, sometimes the folks that we know that we should have, that people will want to come and see, aren't available to us. So we have to look in other directions, and I think we found a formula that is working for us right now. This is the picture. And thank you to Kenny Price, who was our new fair photographer this year. When he showed me this picture, I'm like, that's exactly what I saw. This is where we should be. And this is where we should be for every show that we have in the grandstand. Except for, of course, the dirt shows, because those people would be run over there in the front. And this is just, of course, some pictures that Kenny took of our shows. We had very successful, what we call dirt shows, with our demolition derby, our monster trucks, and of course the monster trucks up here with the Nightmare. Okay, when I went out there and they were like, you're going to blow this up? That was a new twist on his show, which because of widening our track, he was able to do. Oh my gosh, people thought that was hilarious. Oh yeah, and there was a guy inside there that they set on fire and they blew the car up. However, I'm not sure about the carcinogens that came out of that burned up car because I was backstage, but everybody in the crowd seemed to really enjoy it. And this being what was new for 2015, we have a new fair photographer, and mind you, he is very budget friendly. He cost us nothing, except Mr. Price did come to me, and the only thing that he asked to change for next year, he said if I would be willing to have him back, was could he get a golf cart? Because it was a little tough. He was there every day of the fair and going from one end to the other, and I think the man deserves a golf cart, so I will make that happen next year. But these are just some pictures that remind us of what we did in 2015 too. We did knock the stage down in 2014, but all the excavating happened in 2015. Ooh, this is just another picture, kind of stretched out there a little bit. But look at that stage, and I don't know if you can see the screens that are hanging there on both sides, but the screens really were a phenomenal part of this, and I give a lot of credit to our promoter for making this happen, and I know that he wanted to make a statement as much as we did, and this made the statement that we are a venue that is to be reckoned with. When our promoter was heading back home on Wednesday, we were already getting calls from some of the big houses in Nashville. William Morris and creative artists are already contacting us. I haven't had that happen, so I'm very excited about being on the front end of that. That's why we are working hard to get things rolling before even the end of the year, because we've got people that now want to come and make sure that their name is part of our venue, and they add to those phenomenal names that we've had a very long, rich history of having. But one of our next newest things, and this was a huge success, was our Princess Day. Now, I'm not sure how many of you had little prince or princesses that came and were involved in this, but we had over 400 kids that showed up to participate with Princess Day, and it was just a ton of fun. And next year we're going to expand that actually and try to do something, maybe even some superheroes, so that we can get all the kids involved. But this was just really, really neat to see these princesses around the fairgrounds, and they did a lot of pictures with the kids that came in, and then there was an event at the end of the program on the Gumper stage, which is what you're seeing right there with Elsa and all the other princesses. And of course, we couldn't do what we do without the volunteers, and I know that probably there's a lot of folks in this room right here that have participated as a volunteer. And this is just a small list of those items that they do for us, and as you can tell, that this is a big part of the fair, the items that are on here. This year we had 2 shuttles, and which really worked out really well, instead of the one, and so that was a big plus. And I never have a problem filling the shuttle drivers. That's really a fun thing that everybody likes to do, and I appreciate it very much. as long as I put on there about the beverage servers, this year we did hair record. We sold well over 77 kegs of beer, and I think if you equate that to the amount of troubles that we had at the fair with the daily updates that we get from the sheriff's office as to, what happens on the fair, you will see a couple alcohol-related issues, but they were all issues that came onto the fairgrounds that way, which that number has gone down greatly, that since we serve it on the grounds, we don't have folks that actually have issues coming in, but we did this year. But we also had very, very short reports. I can remember when the police reports were multiple pages for single days. They were bullet points, four or five, issues. And the most exciting one, of course, was the pig that escaped on Cooper Street. We have new events coming to the fairgrounds. It's not all about the fair, as Mr. Overton reminds all of us. The fair is 1 week a year for the fairgrounds, but the fairgrounds is very important to the community in many, many ways. And we've got some new things happening. On October 24th and 25th, we have an event that American One is actually partnering with a Buy Michigan Now festival that takes place and has for a number of years down in Detroit, and they're very excited about bringing it to Jackson. So I encourage all of you to come out. It's going to be all kinds of Michigan-made products. They're going to have entertainment. They're even going to do a pumpkin chunking thing out on the infield where you put your pumpkins in and see how far they fly. And so it's really going to be a fun new event. So something new and exciting that we're bringing to Jackson again. And additional events going on. We just finished the AKC Dog Show, which I worked it with a number of my staff this weekend, and we did have to take the fair raincoats out again for Saturday for that event. It was rainy, but we had I think they told me over 700 dogs. That's a lot of dogs. That's a lot of dog people. And I don't know if the rain made them a little bit cranky on Saturday, but it turned out to be a great weekend, and they ended up using the grandstand and the American One to do their shows for the show ring, which was a change from last year. They used the barn area and decided that this new venue with the two buildings worked out much better for them, so that's how they'll proceed for the next few years. We've got an art show that's actually coming to the Gumper building this year on the 19th, and they're very excited about using that venue because they think that it's going to give a whole new flavor to their art show, and we're excited about having them there. Please pray that the weather is warm, because I'm not sure that they're aware there's no furnaces in that building, but by the 19th of September, I think we should still be in good shape. Consumers Energy is doing a private color run on the 29th. It's something that Consumers is doing as I believe, I'm not sure if it's a fundraiser but I'm not sure if it's in coordination with United Way, but it's a private event. It's not a public event, but they're going to do it on the track, and so I'm kind of excited to see that, and it's going to be a good rental for us for just that few hours. Yeah. We have the Craftorama coming in October. They've been coming for many years. We have another cage fight, and I have to say I worked the last one. I was very impressed with the amount of money that I made because the fair takes the alcohol for this event. We made over $5,000 on this 3 or 4 hour event a few months ago. I'm excited about repeating that again in October. But this is run by a gentleman, a local businessman here in town who his family owns Printer Plus. I think that's the name of it. Anyway, he's been doing it for years, runs an extremely tight ship. I was very impressed. Matter of fact, I said that if he wants to do any other events, I'd be happy to partner with him because that's how prepared he is. And then November, we have the American One car sale, which they have, and then, of course, Night Lights begins. So we've got a busy schedule. And this is just one more thing that will, of course, enhances our reason to continue to work toward our master plan program, because see the types of events that we have and the few new ones that we are getting, but we can see where a new master plan will certainly increase a million other opportunities. So thank you very much for giving me a few minutes to give you the lowdown on what's happening. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Denise. I serve on Community Corrections Advisory Board. We meet quarterly and met last week, and there was a question from one of the members about use of people from the programs there at the fair, and I told him I'd give them a little shout out. I don't know how much work they did down there, but I know they typically have, so.
Yeah, actually, we haven't had to have them or haven't been able to get them for a few years. This year, we were able to. They do a phenomenal job. They're very focused. We don't have to do a lot of oversight. They bring their own folks to oversee what's going on. But most of these people that come down from both the community service and from the corrections program, they enjoy working on the fairgrounds. So we do appreciate that.
Yeah, there's a lot of staff time that goes into that with the court and the jail people, so that's all good. So, Commissioners, any other questions of Denise on the fair report? Okay, thanks, Denise.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the prosecutor's report with Prosecutor Jarzinka. Mr. Prosecutor.
Good morning. Morning. Prosecutor's report today, basically we've had a number of notable trials so far this year. Just to highlight a few of them, Stephen Krogowski assaulted an elderly gentleman in an apartment, was convicted of assault with intent to murder earlier this year, had 40 to 80 years at the Department of Corrections. Michael Liddell Young Jr. Was convicted second-degree murder. This is the scalding of the young child in the bathtub and did not seek medical treatment. Received 15 years to life. And then also in the spring, Jamario Dooley and Drashawn Glaspie. It was a murder case. It was a shooting, I believe, on 4th Street, and the two defendants were convicted as charged. The felony murder, which was life without parole. And then lastly, we had the Brandon Mann murder trial this spring, who was recently sentenced for the killing of Clayton Orange in Parma Township. Was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced to 60 years minimum Department of Corrections, plus 2 years of felony firearm. So we've had a number of notable results here so far this year, very successful. Going into this September, we've got a number of trials that are going to be going this month in October. Next Monday we have the murder trial, People versus Akram Bilal. It's a murder case that occurred last July 4th evening in the city. We also have the Riley Spittler murder case, Don Dixon Bay, and also Eldon Huffman is coming back on the docket later this month as well, although there's an issue whether Mr. Huffman's health is going to allow that case to go forward as scheduled. And in October we also have another murder case, Troy Johnson. So we do have a pretty busy fall schedule starting next Monday with our serious cases, but we also continue to be busy on our specialty courts. We have what's called the Recovery Court, which basically is a drug court for people with alcohol addictions and drug addictions, run in circuit court by Judge Beebe. We also are responsible for the mental health court, Judge Claren, assigned a prosecutor there. That continues to be very busy. And also the Recovery Court is expanding to add a component of veterans, veterans who have addictions coming back from the Middle East. And of course we do have our domestic violence court run by Judge Mazer down at District Court. That is a very busy docket, and it doesn't really get as much attention as it probably should in the local media, because we have literally hundreds and hundreds of domestic violence cases that occur every year, and those cases are serious, but they just don't get attention unless the assault results in a death and there's a murder charge. In addition to that, our abuse and neglect docket continues to be very busy, split between Judge Laflamme and Judge Beebe in Circuit Court. We continue to use a child advocacy center. It's been very successful. I think currently this year we're probably going to exceed 200 interviews. We're on pace for that by the end of the year, which we've never had that many interviews. It's gone up each year. So it's been a very successful endeavor. And as you know, basically it means that, typically children who have been abused sexually, but sometimes physically, it's a way where they can come to a setting which is not cold and clinical, where they're interviewed one time about which we believe would be a, let's say, a sexually abusive incident, so they don't have to tell a number of adults what happened. They just have to say it one time in a very non-threatening environment. And that's been helpful not only to the child victim and the child victim's family, but also to law enforcement and prosecutors as far as evaluating cases that we can charge and take to court successfully. So we've noticed in a lot of our child sexual assault cases, we've been very successful the last several years because of that. I think it's helped us out a great deal. But that is being used very well, and the way that works is that the detectives, the caseworkers, and the assistant prosecutor attend those interviews at the center, which is near the airport. And so it's a good chance for them to meet, discuss the case, observe the interview of the child, and also then post-interview talk about the case. You know, do we have a good case here or not? Should we proceed forward? You know, how did the child victim do as far as interviewing with what they call a forensically trained interviewer of child victims. So that's been very successful. It continues to be well used. And so that's basically my brief report. I think the earlier report was more detailed with nuts and bolts. These are more of the cases we've seen this year, ones that gone to trial of note, and ones that are coming up here this fall. Any questions at all? Yes. Commissioner Alexander?
Thank you. In regard to the Child Advocacy Center, as Chair of Human Services, I attend a lot of meetings in which the services there are brought up. My question to you would be in regard to the facility. Is it adequately meeting the needs, or are you looking for a new facility?
It's adequately meeting the needs, but I think if we continue on the trend where we're going to have more interviews, we probably would need a larger facility. Currently, it operates under the umbrella of Catholic Charities of Jackson, Lenawee, and Hillsdale counties, and I know there is a plan to look at another facility. Currently, it's being shared with the owner of Adam, another day, another memory. And so it's been working right now, but I think definitely long term, I think the goal is to have a larger facility that we can use for child victims.
Thank you.
Well, Jerry, just to follow up on that, got a little experience with that, and it's hugely helpful having that here in town versus having to go to Ann Arbor for these, for both the victims and the police officers. And that facility has bounced around a little bit over the last several years. Is this its third location it's in, I think, probably?
I believe it's the second location. It was the Center for Family Health originally, and then it moved here.
Okay.
Its current location.
And has there been thought to trying to move it into a county facility somewhere, or could thought be given to that? I think it'd be
Probably
a much more stable place.
Thought can be given to that, yes.
Yeah.
If I may add to that conversation, we have been having conversations at many of the DHS meetings and talking about what type of facilities are most ideal, because it is they're looking for a non-clinical area. But yeah, I continue to hear conversations, and even with Director Zoe Lines, we spoke again about it last week at DHS meeting, and there's another facility that again, the conversations are continuing, but yes, I continue to mention county buildings and working with our existing facilities. So they're good conversations.
Good. Good. Any other questions for the prosecutor? Steve?
I wanted to thank Jerry on the hard work they've done in working with the consumer group, and also getting that up and running. I've heard a little bit from some of the merchants that have had a discussion with you, and I hope we're able to continue that program and work towards alternative methods of dealing with some of these issues that these stores have, because a lot of times they just don't bother to call when they have to deal with stuff like this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much.
Jerry.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the Youth Center quarterly report. Jeremy.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm also going to give a verbal update for Rise Above. This is the first day of school, and so Neil is unavailable to be here. So I'll do the Youth Center, and then as board chair of Rise Above, I'll then put that hat on and talk to you a little bit about Rise Above. The normal stats, we're at 19 for detention. Since the submission of this report, we are actually full in residential now with a waiting list, and that actually that's been a while since we've been full at 12 for our residential. If you remember, many years ago with budgets, we closed down a wing, so our capacity was at 26. But right now, with one of the wings shut down, we're at 12. So during the last 3 months, we had one resident that was released due to priority release overcrowding. Unfortunately, that resident was supposed to return to court 2 days later for a court hearing and failed to do so. So a pickup order was issued for them, and they were returned shortly thereafter, and just was required to spend the rest of her days that she had over her head for domestic violence with us. A couple things. After the submission of this report, I met with county administrators, and I will be back at the next, for personnel finance, for this next bullet here, bringing a restructuring plan regarding a supervisor that became a probation officer back in May, and we've been doing some piloting as far as structuring and covering mandated coverage for designated people in charge, as well as ratios and such. So again, originally was looking at bringing that to you into the October for personnel finance, but we got to go ahead to be able to do that today, so I'll be talking a little bit more about that later. Working with IT on upgrading our resident management software. This holds the medical information of our residents, our census, also our ability to bill out of county in the state if we're housing those residents. And the software that we have is a Microsoft Access database that is of the 2003 model or version, and it's not able to be upgraded to the current operating systems, and we're having a lot of problems with that, so working with IT on that. The other thing I really wanted to bring to your attention, there is a push across the nation, but Michigan's getting on board, to raise the minimum age for juveniles to 18. Currently in the state of Michigan, a 17-year-old is considered an adult. We're one of 9 states that's still considered 17-year-olds as adults. All the other states at least consider them juveniles still. So there's legislature that's being, it has been drafted and is in the different forms of working out some of the details right now, but they're trying to push to raise the juvenile age to 18. So 17-year-olds would still be considered 18-year-old, or 17-year-old would still be considered a juvenile. If that goes forward, there's going to be some serious conversations that overall we'll have to have, because just having an 11-year-old with a 17-year-old within the facility, it's just not the right thing to do. We just really need to make sure that, and facility-wise could be difficult. So we're doing a waiting to see right now, but there's that Raise the Age Michigan. They have a lot of that information. I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and we're seeing where this is going right now. From everything that we're getting, this will happen at some point. It might not necessarily happen this current session, but there's a lot of research out there that talks about the brain development of adolescents and such, and that really treating them as adults is not the right thing to do either. So that's what I have for my report. Any questions regarding that?
Well, Jeremy, just the last part, Sarah actually had mentioned that she serves on a MAC committee. I think that they were talking about that, and she mentioned it here a meeting or two ago, but hopefully they'll look at that thoroughly and understand the financial implications both in the juvenile system.
Yeah.
And I have to wonder how much it's just simply trying to ease the burden on corrections myself. And I don't necessarily agree that it's the best thing, but I'll keep an open mind to it. But Commissioners, Sarah?
I did want to address that a little bit. I spoke about it because we got a presentation actually back in April on this. And Michigan Association of Counties is obviously pushing for the financial impact, because obviously it impacts corrections, our county jail, our juvenile system, all that. It's going to be significant. And at this point, Michigan Association of Counties as a whole has advocated not to raise the age. They're against it as a whole at this point. So, because dollars aren't being streamed into our county for something like this right now. So.
And I was talking with Judge Wilson and Mr. Adkins. That's our concern too. It's an unfunded mandate, and so whether it's right, wrong, indifferent, the fact of the matter is there's results that we have to make, or decisions that we have to make if this goes, and just the funding is a concern.
Well, hopefully they'll realize there's implications beyond just the financial ones on a decision like that.
Yeah.
So, Commissioners, any other questions? Thank you, Jeremy. Okay. Oh, you wanted to speak more on that?
Yeah, just again, Rise Above had, just as a reminder, they operated a pilot this last spring semester with one classroom, 8 students, and those are students that have been expelled or long-term suspended from the local public schools. 3 schools in particularly, they focused with Western, Northwest, and Jackson Public Schools, and had a very successful pilot. And the credits that the youth were working on, we were really impressed with the amount of credits that they were able to earn over this last semester. The 3 schools have been having multiple conversations with Neil as well, and are committing to continue to be supportive, as well as financial supportive, and going forward, which is nice. We also are able to open up another classroom this next year, and so we're going to have 2 classrooms operating with 2 teachers, and again, having the schools come alongside. We are having a grand opening on September 25th. I do have some flyers I can either pass out or just leave over by Adam if you want to pick those up. Love to have you come on out to the grand opening and see what great things they've done to the building that you have allowed them to lease. So I think that's about it for that.
Thanks, Jeremy, and you can leave those with Adam.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have J.C. Dot with their monthly report.
Good morning, Commissioners. You do have the written update in your packets there. I just want to highlight a few items within. The first one we listed, wanted to make you all aware of the numerous culvert replacements that we have throughout the county. We've made mention of this before, but with every rainstorm, it just seems like more and more of the culverts are failing. These are generally original installations from back when roads were last built or improved, so 50 or 60-year-old culverts. Generally, the design life is between 30 and 50 years, so we're kind of at a perfect storm, so to speak, where things are failing before our eyes that were original installations. The 6 listed are now repaired, and we're literally doing several of these a week, and I didn't compile a full list, but I believe we have 30 to 35 on a backlog of work right now that are keeping us busy. And after every storm event, seems like we're adding more. So just want you to be aware of that, and if anybody knows of any, what you want to look for over culverts is kind of a sinkhole starting to form. You might think it's a pothole at first, or even a depression. Let us know, because what's happening is there's a hole in the culvert somewhere, and when you get flow, it's washing the subgrade of the road out from underneath. So it's a serious safety hazard. So we need to be alerted to that right away. Skipping down to number 4, I just wanted to highlight the good work that Parma and Springport townships are doing in participating in a 70-30 match of wedge patching. So this is kind of a partnership. So instead of just going and spray patching a series of holes in an area, a bad roadway, they are actually, as a project, we're compiling a list of areas and then putting hot mix asphalt wedges. So it's a great partnership, something we'd like to expand and work with other townships on. On the heels of our plow truck discussion last week, wanted to give you some numbers. It was asked exactly how many trucks we have, so here it is. County Highway Division has 46 trucks for 39 plow routes, and that provides us with 7 backups for anticipated breakdowns. You can tell things are bad when we've got the backups ready to roll. State Trunk Line has 16 trucks for the 14 plow routes that it runs. And you might recall our discussion was to aggressively go for 14 new and then just rotate out the nice trucks that we already have in the State Trunk Line division. Those are our best trucks, and that's where our newest equipment generally will be. And then jumping down to item 7, the Beach Road culvert, long-awaited replacement. We do have contractor lined up. You might remember awarding some work here in August for that, starting September 17th for the new 60-inch culvert there. Colts Road in Hanover Township is a great partnership with the township there. You can see an aerial photo showing a truck that's trying to maneuver out onto Coates Road. And if you've been by there, you'll notice the trucks have to swing wide and actually into the yard of the residence just at the top of that photo. And you can see they have 2 driveways, and they're expanding that facility to the right. So more and more truck traffic is expected there. So we're working on a Category A economic development grant with them. There's some refinements to make to that grant application, but that would actually install some curb and gutter and a nice paved roadway up to that second driveway. So we kind of did what we call a phase 1 with some drainage work and basically a platform for the trucks to maneuver to get in and out in the interim period. And it's kind of the Lego block philosophy where what we're doing now can count towards the work to be done later, so it doesn't have to be redone, so to speak. Hague Avenue Bridge, we're happy to report, is open, and we're working on a final punch list, and final numbers will be shared in my next monthly report after we get everything finalized on the project. After a lot of the hiccups, the project went smoothly, and it's a very nice bridge at this point, so we're happy to see that. Moscow Road, Lansing Avenue, and County Farm Road surface restoration project. The fog seal is being worked on. I think Moscow is the only one left, and it has been done on County Farm and Lansing, so all that remains at this point would be pavement markings, and we're excited to see that nearing completion. It's a federal aid project. Item 12 is 5th Street. Project we're all well aware of. We're having a pre-construction meeting here very soon. We did get commitments from MDOT that the contractor has been awarded the bids, so we're anticipating an aggressive schedule here with a start date in the next couple of weeks, so I'll keep you apprised of that. And Hanover Road, here's an update. You see an image there posted. We did some survey work and some initial design, and we found that the red areas in this exhibit would be impacted by widening the guardrails out, which actually was some of the rationale. Not that a complete study like this was done a year ago, but we didn't want to impact wetlands. In fact, we were told by DEQ at that time that we couldn't. And after a site walkthrough, they affirmed that. The high quality of these wetlands are basically saying no fill would be allowed, even if we mitigated with the purchase of credits. So we put our heads together and we're trying to figure out a way to maybe, instead of going the 6 to 8 feet from the white line out, maybe striking a compromise of 4 to 5 feet. The old guardrail, if you remember how it was approximately 3.5 to 4 feet from the white line. So we are trying to get at least another foot or so. And just this weekend, I did investigate some other installations throughout southwest Michigan where a 4.5-foot installation does look pretty good, actually. It gives quite a bit of leeway, much more than we have now, of course. So it would be at least as good as it was, if not even a little wider. And what we would strike to do is absolutely no slope disturbance on either side, and just try to drive 8-foot posts instead of 6-foot posts. So we're getting closer and closer to a solution, and our hope is to have our crews do that installation. We had a meeting last week to talk about that, and looks like we can do that. So, any questions on that?
What are you hopeful for the timeline there?
Well, this fall is the target. I can't guarantee we'll make harvest, though, when combines are trying to pass through, but my goal is to be able to sleep at night in the winter.
Exactly, when those school buses and
Exactly.
the villages plowing, yes.
Exactly. I have always taken the stance, as you know, that it's a huge safety concern. So we want to make sure that that we mitigate and keep any potential hazards from happening. Our safety grant projects, item 14 on the note of guardrails, we put in for almost $500,000 worth for 2017. It's a 2-year ahead planning. The first one is Airport and Springport Road intersection, $101,000. We received a petition from 59 residents living at the 3 senior living centers nearby there. So that would upgrade the crosswalks and the signals and make them ADA compliant. Right now there is a great deal of difficulty trying to cross that intersection, as reported by the residents, and it is very busy, as you know. Rives Junction Road non-motorized walkway, that's the second time we're putting in for that. So that would involve some collaboration with the school district to accommodate a non-motorized walkway for the students. And then Folks Road, jumping into item 15, was the third project that we put in. We did get that study back, as you know. It showed $116,000 to take care of the 3 areas shown in the photograph there. The area of the ATV accident, of course, was our primary concern, but we were looking at it and realized that 2 nearby areas were just as bad, if not worse. So it only makes sense to address the region as a whole. So if awarded, that would provide 80% of the money, and we'd have to talk with the township and collaborate on coming up with the extra 20%. The township could move forward right now if they wanted to under a local match program if they could provide the 70% funding. But preliminary indications are that the money just isn't there in their budget right now. So, any questions on that? Okay. Lastly, I just want to report that we have new leadership. Our state superintendent and the assistant state superintendent of our trunk line work, Ted Kinch and Tom Brown, announced their retirement here recently. So we, in an effort to try to pass that baton smoothly, we initiated our recruitment efforts internally, and we had 5 qualified candidates. So we're happy to see Bob Holbert accepted the job as the state trunk line superintendent, Ted's former position. And our new assistant is Brian Zimmerman, and our assistant working foreman is still in the union, but very much a leadership role, is Denny Waltz. So we congratulate those 3 gentlemen on their new appointments, and we're excited to have them on board. Ted and Tom will be with us through November, and they're busy over the next 2 months training these individuals to make sure things go well for the winter season. Yes?
On Ayers Road, when you go to that box culvert, how high is it going to be internally? Is it going to be 60 inches inside?
Is it going to be what?
Is it 60 inches internal or 60 inches wide?
On Ayers or on Beach?
Ayers.
On Ayers, I think that's a 9 by 5 box culvert.
Okay, so will the drain commissioner be coordinating with you then to straighten out the drain on either side? Because I know it's quite overgrown and part of the issue there.
Okay. My understanding is a 9 by 5, and we have to bury part of the bottom for fish bedding, of course, so the actual height would be less than the 5 feet. We'll make sure of that. That's a great point. I'll talk with the team and make sure we do that. Anything else?
Chris, can we go back to culverts for a second? It seems like how we find out about those is catastrophic failure, and then we get a press release saying the road's closed or whatever while you're repaired. Is there any better way to do that? And I wonder if we keep a list now, a running list of what culverts were replaced when. If we had done that 40 or 50 years ago, it probably wouldn't be that difficult to go back and look and see which the oldest were. But is there any way to inspect those to know ahead of time so that we're not just dealing with catastrophic failures?
We're on the very same page. One of the things that our team has been doing in recent years, especially when staffing was a little higher in the engineering department, was doing a proactive assessment. We use RoadSoft to inventory our road conditions. Jackson's actually a leader amongst county road agencies in its implementation of inventorying its signs, culverts, and other road features, guardrails included. So that project was started. It's not yet complete, though. It's mostly the larger culverts. Short answer is we need to look at having our engineering team, and one of the staffing concerns I have is that we are not, our numbers in engineering are very low right now. In fact, we only have 2 individuals. We just appointed a position internally, so we've got 3. But we want to get that team right-sized so that we can proactively evaluate these culverts, especially during summer season. Just keep them out all year, hitting quadrants of the county and inventorying culverts as well as other major safety concerns. Guardrail areas like Folks Road could have been identified as a future project or a grant application. So it's a lot to ask our team to step out of the busyness of the crisis, so to speak, and look out, but that's my job as their leader, is to pull us out of that trap, so to speak, and begin to look long-term. So we're working on that.
Thank you. Commissioners, John?
Hi, Chris. Going back to item 8, is there anything that Lomar should be doing with those driveways to work with the county to make those safer, or are those driveways adequate?
The only concern we had, I think, was width, to make sure we had the adequate radius for the trucks for their safety coming in and out. We didn't identify any major issues. The design of the Category A work, the Phase 2 work, will make sure that the proper turning radii are available for those vehicles and so forth. Right now, short term, I don't believe there's anything that needs to be done. Yep. Yes.
Julie?
But for clarification, Lomar is working with you, and they have requested your assistance as well as the township. You went out on, I believe it was New Year's Eve, was it Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve? There were critical issues, and there have been, and you guys have been in continued conversation, working collaboratively together, and I believe they've been more than fair and with their efforts, correct?
Absolutely, yes. We met on site 3-4 months ago, actually, and talked through the major issues. Township was there, Lomar representatives were there, made sure we understood what we needed there, and that was when the idea for the Category A grant kind of started to grow wings, and we pushed forward. So we realized there was more than just a quick fix or minor work. There was really a more intense project here that we needed to collaborate on. So yeah, they've been great partners.
Commissioners, any other questions? None. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Commissioners, if you can indulge me for a moment, study session, we invited Tammy here. She didn't make the agenda for some reason, so if we can give Tammy a few minutes to talk, even though it's not on the agenda, it would be appreciated. Tammy.
Good morning. I think why I'm here is to clear up some questions in reference to the cut that we made. What I want to do is back up a little bit. Talk about what we did January 1 of 2015, and that was our reorganization. Okay, we came to this body, requested the permission for the reorganization, and cut 2 positions at that time. Okay, when we cut 2 positions, we saved about $48,000 for the county on an ongoing basis, and that was in personnel costs. One of those positions was in our traffic department, and I recall hearing from study session something about the e-ticketing and, you know, possibility of being able to reduce some staff. We did that. Okay, we were proactive in that. We did that at the beginning of this year, knowing that this is something that was going to come along. So when we were asked again in June, I think it was, I'm not sure the month, but when we were approached and asked to give another $50,000, either in a revenue enhancement or a cut for the 2016 budget year, to say the least, we were quite shocked, going, oh, wait a minute, we just did this. Where are we going to find this $50,000? So when that happens, the creative side of my brain has to start working and figure out where this is going to come from. Because we're at a point at the district court level right now where we're going to have to, in the future, for future cuts, start looking at these non-mandated services. And that's something that I never, as a court administrator, thought would ever happen and never wanted to see happen, because those non-mandated services are your probation departments, which help with the citizens in the community in a big way. I mean, we have a terrible heroin problem now. If we start cutting probation officers, that's going to limit the help that we're providing and the service that we're giving there. Or we go to our collections department. Okay, so we have to cut maybe a collection officer. Well, my collections department right now is about $100,000, collecting about $100,000 more to date right now than what we did last year at this time. If I cut a person from there, those revenues are going to go down. So those are not the areas I want to go to. So that's how this Jackson Traffic Safety came about. What happens with this, and I hope that you all are aware, because I didn't bring anything with me, back in 1989-ish, 88, 89-ish, Office of Highway Safety and Plating came to the county and basically said, here's grant dollars. What we want to do is we want to help the county reduce traffic crashes in your county, in your area. We want you to put together this Jackson Traffic Safety Board. We did that. They had a grant amount of money. I don't know what that was at that time. And by 1990, 1992, the money that was provided to this commission was no longer available. So at that time, the district court bench decided to make a $5 assessment, an additional $5 assessment on every civil infraction and traffic misdemeanor that came through our court. With that $5 special assessment, that money would be diverted to the Jackson Traffic Safety Commission for the purpose of helping reduce traffic crashes in Jackson County. The idea was that the money would go to local law enforcement agencies. They would need to come to the commission, ask for grants for their departments to put maybe pay for overtime, pay for whatever it was that they wanted to do. But the idea was for the reduction in traffic crashes. The problem, and everything was going great for several years. The problem is, in my opinion, there's a grant match that goes with these grants, okay? That the law enforcement has to provide a match. Well, I'm sure all of you can, I guess, see that the budgets here are down, and the budgets in the local law enforcement are down as well. Some of, in my opinion, the local law enforcement agencies can't afford the match, to pay the match. So the requests to Jackson Traffic Safety Commission from local law enforcement agencies over this past several years has decreased. We're not getting a lot of local law enforcement agencies that are coming requesting the funds, okay? So what had happened over the course of several years is there was a surplus. There was money left over that went unspent and was just carried over year after year after year. Then e-ticketing came along. We needed to find money for e-ticketing. Local law enforcement agencies, again, don't have the extra funds. So we went, local law enforcement and district court went to Jackson Traffic Safety Commission and said, hey, will you provide with this surplus that you have? Great. It goes back to local law enforcement, what this was intended to do in the first place, okay? So the surplus was taken care of, zeroed out, e-ticketing came along, Jackson Traffic Safety Commission continues. Well, what's happening now is the funds are being spent on things that our judges, my judges, I have Judge Phillip who's here now that he can back me up, we had a meeting. The judges basically feel that if we are diverting this $5 assessment to Jackson Traffic Safety and it's not being spent on the things that it was intended to be spent on, we would rather have that money go into the general fund, go back to the county in the general fund. This board can decide what happens with that money from there. So we're still making the assessment, the $5 assessment. My judges have just said, we do not want to authorize the money to go to Jackson Traffic Safety any longer. They did indicate that they would review this again next August. We had a judges meeting in August. They would review it again in August, depending on the budget situation. If we were in a better budget situation at that time in August, they would revisit it and revote whether they wanted to allow that to happen again. But as of right now, if we're having to come up with $50,000, we would rather be credited for the $50,000 that we divert to Jackson Traffic Safety, give it to the county, let the county decide what they want to do with it, and move forward. Are there questions?
Questions or comments? Mike, do you have any comments or no? Tammy, I'll say that I think part of the consternation was the confusion about what would happen with the remainder of the funds. I mean, obviously we were talking about $50,000 to cover what you were asked to give, and I think there's what, 110 or so that goes. There was a question about that other remaining 60, and of course Sarah sits on the committee, and I actually attended the last meeting, or the meeting where they authorized grants that were to start when, the end of this month, I think, Sarah, which would have accounted for, yeah.
If I may, the fiscal year is different. The Jackson Traffic Safety, so yes, their fiscal year ends the end of September. So what we did at the last meeting, because I'm on the board as well, what we did at the last meeting was we approved grants for the 2016 year, which would begin in October. So we did approve those grants. We approved grants, yes. The judges were aware of that. It's one of those things where, you know, grant money dries up all the time, and basically, you know, the message is it's not there. However, we want to give the entire assessment. So last year it was $94,000. I'm not sure what it is going to total up at the end of September for that fiscal year. But what we're saying is the county board of commissioners can decide what's going to happen with that entire assessment that we send. So we're not going to just splice off $50,000 and say, okay, $50,000 going here, now the rest can go there. You folks can decide what you believe is the best thing for those funds.
Well, Mike, if you can chime in, I think there's been brief conversation about potentially reconstituting that committee under the authority of the board, correct? And letting them make those decisions or recommendations.
Yes, that's correct. When we were looking into this committee, not having been here back in the 80s, we were trying to figure out, you know, how it was formulated, how people got on that committee and so forth, and come to find out that we believe there's some changes in order, given that it was initially this $5 plus some federal funding as well. That's no longer there, and that's why it has the state, you know, budget year, fiscal year as well. So we're looking to make some changes and bring it to the board for reconsideration.
Okay, any other questions or comments of Tammy? Steve?
Tammy, as we reconstitute this, your department would be willing to help us walk through this, make sure we have the right people on the committee and that the right organizations are represented, so that way we can have a smooth flow and the judges are still getting a clean message that we're working towards traffic safety. It's not just taking the money and using it to balance the budget?
Absolutely.
Okay, and we would be willing to work through that? I think that that's a clear message we've got to send, that although we're collecting this money, because I can remember us talking about giving grants to local law enforcement for more traffic, just to pay the gas. Back when gas was $5 a gallon, the Board of Commissioners set aside a grant money to pool, and we got in all kinds of trouble because we were going to go out and just start ticketing people to balance the budget was the message, and we don't want that message sent. We want a message sent that we're going to enforce the laws that are there and give our law enforcement people and our courts the resources to do it. So I do thank you then for your help, and I do thank you again for coming, and I do thank Judge Phillip for coming this morning. The understanding is that we're going to work as a team, and I really would like to keep that as part of our plan. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Tammy, thanks for coming. Thanks, Judge. Julie.
So I'm simply asking for clarification. On slide 18 of 39 from the study session presentation, it simply says $50,000 of those funds will now go to offset traffic enforcement costs. So what I'm hearing you to say is the total amount will come over to the discretion of this board and the new committee that is formed to allocate those funds, with $50,000 going to meet the criteria that was set by the administrator's office. Am I following that?
That's my
intent,
intent,
I think
yes.
the expectation is that 50,000 of it is going to account for what the administration has asked for budget help or budget cuts, correct?
Yes.
And the remainder will be up to the discretion of the Board of Commissioners what to do with it. Is that accurate? Okay.
That's correct, as far as
Right,
I'm...
50,000 offset, which leaves 60 remaining. If you accept that at face value, that's what accounts for 50,000 of it in the budget.
And it's all based on tickets, so
Correct.
we can't, it's the filings that come in. So, to project exactly how much that money's going to be is nearly impossible.
All right.
Okay. Any other committee member questions?
If I may part with one thing. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tammy, just if you could help clarify, we received some emails from the health department here recently. It's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that we have agreed, or the Jackson Transportation Safety Program has agreed over the years to from that fund to provide $30,000 to the health department for child safety seats. So that would be another discretionary point that you would be saying that it would be left up to us commissions whether or not we wanted to help out the health department and children with safety seats.
I think that's accurate,
I think that's accurate. What I want to remind you is that I think that was a cut that the health department had to make several years ago as a result of departmental cuts and dollars and things that came from this body that asked for cuts. So that was then picked up by Jackson Traffic Safety. I think that, again, you folks have that burden of deciding what programs are the most important and what programs are not. And I think you're voting to cut some Jackson Traffic or Jackson Transportation, and there's lots of things that are on the bubble or per se on that agenda that you have to make that decision. So you're exactly right.
But Carl, to be factually correct, I think realistically the money, even before it came into the general fund of the county, it was just reallocated to the JTSP, correct?
Correct.
Which is, we're going to do the same thing. It'll be a reconstituted committee, and my guess is you'll have $50,000 less dollars to allocate to them if the ticket revenue remains the same, and that committee won't have to make decisions on where it goes. I mean, you're free to go there and talk to them, and Sarah serves on it. So, okay. Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Tammy.
If I may, one part.
Absolutely.
I want to make it clear that, this isn't something that we took lightly either. And I can't very well look at one of my employees and tell them that car seats or bike helmets or another employee in another department. And that's what it comes down to and boils down to for us, and where we made our decision, is do I cut an employee and take care of my employee, or take care of these other organizations and other departments? And my loyalty has to remain within my department. So I just want that clear.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks.
Okay, that's the end of committee items, and we're down to claims. Looking for motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. You have other minutes and the October reporting schedule, and we're down to public comment. And no new takers, it looks like. Committee member comments. Hearing none, we're adjourned.